Hey guys! Today I want to talk with you about The Midnight Library, a science fiction / fantasy novel by Matt Haig. This novel was first published in 2020 and it was very well received by the critics and the general audience. It became the winner for the Goodreads Choice Award in the fantasy category, and interestingly enough, the same year it was abridged and adapted for radio and broadcast in 10 episodes on BBC Radio 4. As per usual, we will start this review with a short synopsis, then proceed to the non-spoiler review and wrap this video up with the spoilers. If you haven't read this book yet, then do not worry, I will make sure to let you know when the spoilers begin. So, The Midnight Library tells us a story of a young woman named Nora Seed. Nora is someone who is struggling a lot. She battles a multitude of mental health issues, she is unhappy with her life choices, she's estranged from her family as well as from her friends, and she doesn't have a career or a life passion that she would want to pursue. And in the moment where everything seems to be the darkest, Nora dies. And yet, instead of falling into peaceful oblivion, Nora ends up in a library, a safe place between life and death that holds an infinite number of books, each of them telling of a different life Nora could have had if she would have made a different decision. As soon as I read the premise of this book, I was hooked. And I do not mean it in a, well, now that seems interesting type of way. I was hooked. I needed to read this book ASAP. So I obviously bought it right away, put it on my bookshelf, and left it standing there for over a year. I kept on postponing this book because I was nervous. I heard so many great things about it, and I was worried that this novel would not live up to the hype. And the fact that I just loved the premise of They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera, and I bought it at the same time as The Midnight Library, and then I didn't actually like it, it just added to this anxiety of mine that the book will not live up to its potential. And now that I have finally read this novel, I have to say that I think that I would have absolutely adored this book if I have read it 15 years ago. If I would have read it as a teenager, I think that I would have found this book to be borderline life-changing. Now, however, as I'm pushing 30, I can say that I enjoyed this book. It was beautifully written, it contained a great message, and it was an overall pleasurable read. At the same time, however, it felt very simplistic, very young adult. The way it was written was very simple, plenty of dialogues, plenty of empty pages in between the chapters, and to add to that, at times I got even annoyed at how predictable the plot of this book was. That being said, I'm glad that I have read The Midnight Library. While it wasn't the best book that I have ever read, nor had it altered the way I see life, I can understand how this book became as popular as it was. It is very human to wonder, what if? What if I chose different education, pursued a different hobby, moved to a different country, chose a different partner? All of us, even the crazy happy ones, question what if. And this book actually gives us the answer to this question, even if that answer is a generalized one. In addition to that, while I can't claim that The Midnight Library depicts depression accurately, because depression can be so many things, I still can say that this book made me believe that Nora is actually lost and lonely. And that's something most people can relate to as well. The Midnight Library touches one's heartstrings and feels like an important book to read to everyone who feels just a little lost, who has regrets, who currently doesn't have a direction to follow. And while it might not help you to find your life purpose, it helps you to see that it is okay to be lost. On that note, let's move to the spoiler review. If you haven't read this book yet, but you feel like this is something you would like to do, then you should click off this video now. Now, I would like to start the spoiler review by pointing out a few things that I found to be rather irritating in this book. First of all, I can't claim to be a fan of the way Nora ended up in The Midnight Library in the first place. I do understand that the author wanted Nora to feel desperate. He wanted for her herself to make this decision to end it all, to not want to fight anymore. I do understand that we as the readers were supposed to meet Nora at her darkest hour. And to be honest, the whole countdown to Nora's death hooked me instantly. Yet as soon as Nora actually took her life and ended up in the library where she was presented with this possibility to fix her regrets, to find a perfect life and to actually stay in it, I felt weirdly annoyed. Because when you put it like that, when you have a woman committing suicide and being essentially rewarded for it with a chance to inhabit a different life, you are either saying to your reader that if you are lost and unhappy with your life, instead of changing it, you should just kill yourself and that will make it all better. Or you, as an author, are putting yourself in a corner where from the very first pages, the reader knows that by the end of the book, Nora will learn a valuable lesson of appreciating the life she's currently living and will choose to go back to it. In addition to that, I found this whole idea of Nora not only being able to see how her life would have changed if she would have made different decisions, but to actually being able to choose to stay in a life which is essentially not hers, a little unfair and to Nora and to people that surround her. Now let's take her life as an Olympic swimmer as an example. Not our Nora, but that other Nora whose life this was, worked incredibly hard to create this life for herself. She practiced every day. She worked out, she followed a strict lifestyle, she pushed herself to reach her goals. And then our Nora just swoops in, makes a very rash judgment on the state of this life while having very limited information, may I add, and then proceeds to completely bomb the speech that she was hired to give. And I'm not even talking about the other people in the lives Nora visited. It's not fair for her to just jump in and have an option to stay with Ash, for example. Ash didn't fall in love with this Nora. He fell in love with his own Nora. Or the daughter she ends up raising in her perfect life. This Nora, our Nora, is not really her mom. Molly has her own Nora who loves her unconditionally. Now I know that this whole memory loss thing when changing lives was a way for the author to keep us on our toes and introduce this fish out of water concept. And that if our Nora would commit to actually staying in life, her memories from this new life would eventually come back. And our Nora would somewhat merge with the Nora who was living said life. But it still somehow didn't feel fair. Our Nora didn't build her career as a musician. She didn't spend years studying to be a glaciologist. She didn't push herself half to death to become an Olympic swimmer. Nor she gave a birth to a little girl. Her having this possibility to just come in and steal her parallel self's life just felt like she is getting handed something that doesn't actually belong to her. And lastly, I have to say that I wasn't completely in love with the idea that Nora only finally found her perfect life when she ended up in the timeline in which she was happily married. Now, I'm not an idiot. I do understand that it wasn't only her marital status that was different in this life, as well as I understand perfectly how having a supportive and caring partner can improve the quality of your life. But I think that I would have preferred to see her being happy and toying with the idea of picking a life where she is just as happy by herself, with herself, and with her own achievements. I would have liked to see a life in which she has reached this calm peace without external forces. That being said, I appreciated that once Nora came back to her own life, she didn't just run to her future hubby and put the responsibility of fixing her life on him. I liked that the ending of this book showed us her trying to improve her life by herself and didn't actually give us a definite answer on her relationship status. Now, as for the things that I have absolutely loved about the Midnight Library. First and foremost, I enjoyed how the whole idea behind the Midnight Library wasn't actually explained to us. The book ends and we still can't tell for sure whether it was God, a religion, a purgatory of sorts that Nora ended up in, or was it actually science, physics, parallel universes? Or maybe it was all a complete illusion, a drug-induced hallucination, and Nora actually did not travel anywhere at all in those minutes she was dying. I liked how Matt Haig allowed us to pick the option we liked the most. Secondly, I loved how well this book showed that if you are unhappy with yourself, if you lack motivation, if you're not being proactive, if you do not push yourself, you won't be happy. It doesn't matter which life you are in. In most of the lives that we got to observe in this book, Nora was unhappy. But I would argue that she was unhappy not because said lives are bad, but because this Nora, our Nora, is unhappy. She was unhappy being married and running a small pub because the pub wasn't doing well and her husband ended up being an ass. But she did have a choice to leave him, to start over, pick a different career. Now, I'm not saying that's an easy situation to change, but it is not impossible. In the life where she moved to Australia just to be with her friend who died shortly after Nora moved there, we see Nora unhappy once more. And while I understand her grief, I also believe that Nora herself allowed her to be stuck in Australia. After Izzy's death, she could have moved back home, and I'm sure that nobody would have judged her for that decision. And when we look at the lives where she's the Olympic swimmer or glassologist, Nora decides that she's unhappy in those lives without even knowing much about them. I'm sure that the Nora who originally lived said life is more than happy drinking tea, giving public speeches, or living in the cold because she actually feels passion for those things. This book shows us so very well that nothing in your life will change until you yourself will. And lastly, I think that the book portrays perfectly the idea that we all tend to fall into self-pity parties. When you think about those few things that day that actually pushed Nora to commit suicide. She lost her job, her cat died, her neighbor doesn't need her help anymore, her brother wasn't speaking with her because she thinks that he's upset with her. Her best friend is not answering her messages because Nora thinks that Izzy is upset as she didn't move to Australia with her. When in reality, her brother answered her just 7 minutes after receiving her message. In reality, he wasn't ignoring her because he was mad, but because he had his own problems to deal with. And Izzy was just too busy to constantly keep in touch. We tend to concentrate so much on our own lives that we tend to forget that other people are living theirs. And while losing your job or losing a pet are awful things, this book shows so well that this is just a bad period and not a bad life. Just because Nora is unhappy now, it doesn't mean that she will be unhappy forever. Overall, I think that the last quote in The Midnight Library summarizes this book perfectly. Yesterday, I knew I had no future and that it was impossible for me to accept my life as it is now. And yet today, that same messy life seems full of hope. But that's just my opinion. What about yours?